right, we're going to go ahead and get started. So hello, everybody. Thank you for taking up the time to join our webinar this morning. The purpose of this presentation is to introduce you to New York City Accelerator and familiarize you all with each component of the program. We're going to walk through all of the ways that our free program can help improve your building or portfolio of buildings. Over the next hour or so, you'll learn the fundamentals of energy efficiency, some common energy upgrades, and financing options available for you. We'll also go over some case studies of buildings in the city that have undertaken some of these upgrades, and you'll also hear from some representatives from our partner organizations. To go over some housekeeping items, we do have a full agenda over the next hour, so we'll have a Q&A session at the end. So if you're not already, take a moment to familiarize yourself with the chat function and icon. It should be at the top of your screen. So as you have questions, drop them in the chat as they come into your head, and we'll address them at the end of the presentation. But please do not leave today without having your questions answered. Next slide. So to formally introduce myself, I am Jasmine Esbute. I'm the community coordinator with the New York City Accelerator, and I'll be spending the next few minutes introducing the program. Next slide. So what is New York City Accelerator? It's a free New York City sponsored program by the mayor's office that helps buildings control energy cost, meet compliance for local laws, boost building energy performance, and increase energy savings. So we work with buildings just like the ones that you represent to reduce building carbon emissions across the city. When you participate in New York City Accelerator, you get free technical assistance from our team. So you're assigned an account manager that will identify upgrades best suited for your particular building or buildings, and they're there to walk you through the process. And I'll spend a little bit more time in the next slides discussing what that process looks like. Depending on the size of your building, if it's over 25,000 square feet, for example, you're subject to local laws. If that's applicable, we work with you to help your building fall into compliance. You're also connected with licensed and experienced service providers for the scoped work, so you don't have to worry about finding providers on your own. And as a building owner undertaking these upgrades through our program, we connect you with financing options and incentive programs best suited for you and your building. The type and amount of incentives or financing options you qualify for will depend on a couple of different factors, but we do have our financing specialist on today, and he'll talk a little bit more about that towards the end of the presentation. Another really unique feature of New York City Accelerator is that we also offer no to low cost building operator trainings. So if you'd like to build your knowledge on building and energy topics, this is something our program can connect you with. Next slide. So how does New York City Accelerator work? Who is eligible? So any privately owned building in New York City, 5,000 square feet or larger, whether it's new or existing, is eligible. So unfortunately, publicly owned buildings or buildings under 5,000 square feet, so single family homes or two family homes, cannot qualify for the program. So how does it work? You call or email us and we'll provide you the contact information at the end of the presentation, and you're connected with an account manager who gives you objective advice that's customized to you and your building's needs. How much does it cost? What's the catch? So there's no cost, there's no catch, there's no sign up, there's no commitment. If there's one thing I want to stress throughout this presentation is that it is completely free technical assistance from start to finish. Next slide. So what does a typical client experience look like? So first you learn about the program, as you all are today, and once you decide that this is a program you want to participate in, the needs of your buildings are assessed by an account manager, and the upgrades best suited to your building are provided. But you as a building owner or manager are choosing the upgrades that you implement, so no suggestion is a requirement. Once you're in the process of implementation, and even after the project is completed, we continue to stay in touch with you. So in a nutshell, we customize our services to different types of building stakeholders as well. The process might look a little bit different depending if you're a building owner, operator, property manager, so on. And for example, some buildings might only need compliance assistance. But as I mentioned, we customize the level of support you receive based on each building representative's needs. Something that's also important to mention is that there's no limit to the number of consultations you have with an account manager. So New York City Accelerator is here to help buildings every step of the way through upgrades, financing, and project follow-up. And as I mentioned, New York City Accelerator provides free expert advice towards energy efficiency and decarbonization projects, but it does not replace or compete with service providers. So we don't do energy audits, feasibility analysis, or reports of that nature, but we can connect you with service providers who do if that's something that you're interested in or are required to submit. Next slide. So let's zoom in on the implementation process. So once you prioritize projects, whether there's something as simple as upgrading lighting in your building or something a little bit more extensive like heating system upgrades or solar PV system installation, we make sure that you're connected with a service provider that can do the work that you need. Even if you've already selected service providers or contractors for a project, we can still help make sure that you're receiving all of the available incentives that you can in order to bring down the cost of these measures. So in other words, even if you're in the middle of some energy upgrades or have already completed upgrades, this program is still applicable to you. There are also a lot of active city and state level programs, both through agencies and utilities, that are available to pay down the cost of energy efficiency upgrades and will help you determine your eligibility for these programs. Next slide. We also know that an important part of reducing city emissions and helping buildings operate more efficiently is to train industry professionals like you all. So we've established a learning center with dozens of free trainings on a range of different topics. So these trainings are offered through our partner organizations, including the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority, also known as NYSERDA, as well as CUNY Building Performance Lab and Building Energy Exchange, just to name a few. So if anyone associated with your building or company is interested in accessing our free trainings, you can go to the website listed at the bottom of the slide. So that's accelerator.nyc/trainings.
Hi everyone, my name is Aisha. I'm an account manager and I'm going to be defining efficiency for you today. Next slide. We use the term energy efficiency often. Let's discuss what exactly that means. Simply put, it's using less energy to perform the same tasks. Many systems in your buildings can be more energy efficient. For example, your boiler that heats the building, lighting systems that illuminate hallways and apartments, the appliances used for cooling, washing, and drying clothing, as well as the equipment used to heat water and distribute it. Energy efficiency measures include replacing equipment with more efficient equipment or implementing upgrades to controls in the building envelope. Next slide. If you need any work done to correct or prevent violations, that may be an efficiency measure. Next slide. What energy efficiency measures are you interested in pursuing for your buildings? You can let us know in the chat. Next slide.
Hi, everyone. So yeah, as you include some questions or comments in the chat, we'll have time at the end of the meeting to address those. For now, I'm just going to talk about some common efficiency measures that we see in multifamily buildings and efficiency measures that you might be interested in for your buildings. So as we go over some of these efficiency measures, keep in mind that there are some measures that are completely free, depending on building eligibility. So when you're connected with an account manager through our program, they can help you determine your building's eligibility for all of the programs that we work with. And these free options may include or be related to lighting, cool roofing, water conservation, or air sealing. So that's one benefit of using our program, is we will make sure that we're getting you all of the incentives at the lowest cost that we can. So a common measure that buildings implement is LED lighting. So LED lighting uses efficient lighting technology to emit light in a specific direction. Replacing in-unit and common area lighting in your building can enhance building performance and occupant well-being and comfort. And if you have a violation related to dim lighting or other lighting issues, these upgrades might be a particularly important focus for your building. This type of lighting reduces the need for reflectors and diffusers while generating very little heat waste. So this retrofit is among the most cost-effective means to lower energy use, cut operating costs, and reduce your building's carbon footprint. LEDs also just reduce greenhouse gas emissions by using less electricity. They can improve the quality of light and extend the lifespan of bulbs and other lighting equipment. So just as an overview, keep in mind that LEDs have a low level of maintenance, long lifespan, and easy disposal, but that the rewiring for LEDs should be done by a trained electrician, and we can connect you with those providers if you need to be connected with one. And when you implement LEDs, they can greatly reduce lighting-related GHG emissions and lead to energy savings. They're basically suitable for any space and can be adjusted with dimmers for aesthetic preferences. And these really can result in very substantial utility savings and electricity costs. A comprehensive lighting upgrade, for instance, will usually pay for itself in about 3 to 5 years, which is a pretty quick payback period. And as we'll discuss later in the presentation, there are very good incentives available for implementing these upgrades. Another very common measure that we'd see in multifamily buildings is related to one-pipe steam optimization or balancing of your steam system. There are many simple measures for one-pipe steam systems that will also enhance efficiency and comfort. And also, if you have a violation related to heating issues, you may be able to receive rebates or incentives to upgrade your heating system and prevent future violations. So upgrades to one-pipe systems can reduce GHG emissions, also improve tenant comfort and satisfaction, provide temperate control and more balanced distribution, and lead to greater utility savings. So just to zoom out a little bit, if in case folks don't necessarily know how these systems work, one-pipe steam systems distribute heat through a building's pipes to radiators that heat occupant spaces. One-pipe steam is commonly associated with overheating and energy waste when you have a unit that's really hot and people need to open their windows in the winter near their radiator. That's what we're talking about. So optimizing these systems with a few high efficiency upgrades can reduce energy bills and improve resident comfort. So let's zoom in further on these types of systems. One-pipe steam systems have one pipe that connects to each radiator that serves as both the supply line that carries steam from the boiler to the radiator and the return line that drains away water that forms as steam cools and condenses. Steam and water flow in opposite directions in the same pipe at the same time, and then vents release trapped air from the distribution system, allowing steam to travel from the boiler to the radiators. So common problems other than just over or under heating include loud or clanging pipes, leaky radiators, and so on. Sometimes air can sit in the steam main and prevent the even flow of steam to all the risers, meaning different apartments receive different amounts of steam and therefore heat. So one energy efficiency measure that's very common is to allow the air to escape from the steam main to no longer block steam from traveling to all the risers. And this is what's called master venting. They can go on steam main or on risers, and they can result in more equitable distribution of steam, which can reduce your boiler runtime, can save you fuel, and in doing so extend the life of your equipment. Another common measure might include putting a thermostatic radiator valve on all the air vents for radiator to ensure that the room target temperatures are met faster. These are just some examples of very common upgrades. But again, if you're having issues with your heating system, get in touch with us. We'll figure out what's best for your building and help you get incentives for making those changes. Similarly, another system is two-pipe steam system. There are very similar optimization measures that you can do in these. They're slightly different. Two-pipe steam systems have two pipes connected to each radiator, a supply line that carries steam to the radiator, and a return line that drains away condensate. So steam traps on each radiator ensure that only water and air, not steam, enters return pipes. So these systems are similar to one-pipe systems, but the main difference is how condensate is handled through the layout of the piping. But similarly, common problems are loud or clanging pipes, leaky radiators, and over and under heating. Again, with these systems, you can implement advanced controls. So your boiler is firing based on the indoor temperature instead of the outdoor temperature. You can replace the steam traps. They typically fail after 4 or 5 years. And they can close and then you don't get condensate to flow through them, which means water stays in the radiator and steam is therefore blocked from entering the radiator and the room gets cold. So again, these are just a few measures, but if you have either of these kinds of systems and you're experiencing issues with them, get in touch with them. Get in touch with us, and we'd be happy to help you. A more advanced, I just saw in the chat that someone said they lost audio, or other folks having that same issue. Oh, back on, okay, great. So mini split systems, okay, so this is maybe a slightly more advanced measure that you can implement, but it might be a really good fit for some buildings. Some of your buildings might still be on heating oil and may be interested in just full building electrification through heat pumps. One option for heating and cooling system electrification are these heat pumps, and it's true that an added benefit of these are that they allow your building to move fully off of natural gas, depending on the kinds of appliances that you have. These are very efficient pieces of equipment. An air source heat pump may produce 3 times as much heat energy output than input during operation. So these are highly efficient systems. They are commonly used to provide air conditioning by transferring heat from the air inside to the air outside. They can also function reverse to provide heat. Typically, there's one outdoor unit connected to one indoor unit via refrigerant lines, and these require minimal exterior wall penetration, which reduces the porosity of the envelope and the loss of conditioned air through the building envelope. Another option that we see, if your buildings have packaged terminal air conditioners, otherwise known as PTACs, there are actually a few providers now that will replace old PTACs with kind of mini heat pumps that can provide the heating and cooling for your apartment through the PTAC and can allow you to fully electrify your heating system. So if you're in that position, get in touch, because that's kind of a new form of technology that we're seeing some buildings take advantage of. Another measure is just windows. Some of your buildings might have older windows. Residents may complain of draftiness. High performance windows can improve a building's insulation and air tightness by reducing heat transfer, drafts, and noise infiltration. There are some requirements that they have to meet for air tightness, but basically, if you think your building could benefit from high performance windows, we can connect you with service providers and help you use programs that will assist with the cost of these installations. And better windows can go very far into keeping conditioned air inside and therefore making your buildings more efficient. Another common measure is just related to insulation of the wall and roof. High performance insulation improves tenant comfort as well and can save energy while reducing utility bills. It can, it has other benefits as well. It can improve building acoustics. It can reduce heat and cooling loss, and just otherwise enhance building performance. The careful upgrading of insulation is one of the more effective means of reducing energy use and improving the efficiency of a building. And upgrading wall insulation with something like air sealing and the installation of high performance windows and doors is basically, that's like a whole building envelope retrofit that will greatly enhance the performance of a building. And then along with a porous building envelope that's leaking conditioned air, an older roof can result in heating and cooling loss, requiring more energy to heat and cool your building. So high performance roof installations can also just improve the building envelope and increase the efficiency of your building. Maybe your building has violations related to roof leaks or leaks through the envelope. If so, you may be able to address the violations with eligible incentives and rebates. So, insulation in different parts of your building can also help prevent infestations. That's something that building owners report. That just also goes back to making a building's envelope and exterior, frontage basically tighter, so there's less loss of conditioned air, and then you're also keeping, pests outside the building. And a high performance roof retrofit requires sealing roof vents and placing insulation above the deck. It requires a correct installation of the vapor barrier, so that water vapor does not condense within the assembly. Basically these can be complicated projects. They can be pricey. So if you're looking at a potential roof replacement and you want some technical assistance, because it's a lot to think about, please get in touch, and we'd be happy to help you. So that's it for me. Related to roofs, there is a program through the city related to the installation of a reflective roof coating, and that's what we're going to talk about next with Nicola from the COOLROOFS program.
Thank you, Ian. Good morning, everyone. My name is Nicola, and I'm the project manager for the COOLROOFS program. Next slide, please. So a little bit on what the COOLROOFS program is all about and what it offers. The New York City COOLROOFS program is a collaborative initiative between the New York City Small Business Services and the HOPE program, which promotes and facilitates the cooling of New York City rooftops. By working with affordable and low-income housing, nonprofits, and building owners, New York City COOLROOF program engages unemployed New Yorkers in applying white reflective surfaces to rooftops. The HOPE program provides certifications such as OSHA 30 work experiences and employment opportunity so the COOLROOF participants can find long-term employment. The COOLROOF reduces cooling costs, cut energy usage, and lower greenhouse gas emission. This is done in the following ways. It saves money. COOLROOFs can reduce air conditioning costs by 10 to 30% on a hot summer day, when air conditioning accounts for about 40% of the daily electric use. It also can reduce internal building temperature up to 30%, and it preserves the roof structure and cooling equipment. Because COOLROOF does not reach such high temperatures, it prolongs the life of the cooling equipment on the roof and limits the expansion and contraction that results from those temperature changes. Next slide, please. Some eligibility requirements of the COOLROOF. Rooftop eligibility requirements are it has to be flat and in good condition with minimal cracking, covered with one of the following roof types, either granulated cap sheet, asphalt, bitumen, or modified bitumen. It should be easily accessible, no hatch or ladder, window or access. It should be, the rooftop should be accessed by a door, either through an elevator or stairway. And it should be free of dangerous machinery or equipment, and also surrounded by an appropriate 3 foot 8 inches parapet. Who are eligible? Nonprofits, affordable and low income housing, selective cooperative ownership, and organization providing public, cultural, and community services. Next slide, please. This slide shows the difference between the installation before and after of the COOLROOF. The picture on the left shows the black top, and the right, of course, shows the COOLROOF installation. This COOLROOF also reduces carbon emission. COOLROOF reduces carbon emission in New York City at a rate of 0.5 pounds per square foot of rooftop coated. It also combats urban heat island effect. Next slide, please. This is a video. Ian, can you play it? Thank you so much. This video shows the COOLROOF crew out at the Hunts Point Market, which was facilitated by an EPA grant to coat commercial and industrial buildings that is located in vulnerable areas in the Hunts Point area. Thank you. I'll hand you off to Patrick now.
Thank you, Nicola. I'm Patrick Ulusu, and I'm one of the solar specialists on task to help buildings look into the option for solar. So these are the basic bits of solar that are always important to remember. When we do estimates for buildings to see what their solar potential is, we tend to use a 25-year scale to look at how much savings can be accrued in that time period. And the reason why we do that is because panels as a standard are warranted for 25 years, or if anything were to ever happen to the panels, you could get them replaced free of charge. That doesn't mean that solar only works for 25 years. It can work well beyond that. So one of the benefits definitely is that for at least for 25 years and going forward, you'll have operating life, you'll have the cost of your electrical utilization from Con Edison. You can get savings for that through solar. And solar itself is a simple technology. It takes in the sunlight from the sun itself during the day, and it converts that sunlight, that photon energy, it converts it into electrical energy that the building can use, and that also can get sent to the grid to help power the grid. And by having solar around and solar on your rooftops, that's helping to reduce the strain on the grid. And it also helps to keep the energy utilization and the energy for the grid localized, so we don't have to outsource as much for energy. And with this, since it's just taking in sunlight energy and there's not a lot of mechanisms that go into that harvesting that energy, there's very little maintenance that needs to go into a solar installation itself. And the inverters itself are just converting the electricity from DC, direct current, to AC, alternating current, which is what we use for everyday energy. So there's not a lot of moving parts that goes into a solar installation. So checking on it once in a while in the year, like 2 or 3 times a year, just to make sure everything's okay. And also using the software, which will let you know how the panels are performing, or the basic bits for keeping your system up to date. Because it requires sunlight energy, it's important to have the solar in areas where there are no shading, so that the sunlight can have direct access to the panels itself. And that's also something we are always looking at, sunlight and shading from buildings and trees and other structures. And another important part is solar is grid connected. That means that the energy, whatever isn't used on the building at that time of day, gets sent directly into the grid. It's connected to the grid. So if the grid goes down, then unfortunately that means the solar panels won't be functioning during that time period as well. And the main reason for that is to protect line workers. So when the utility workers and line workers, electricians have to go into the grid to work on it, to restore power, we don't want any energy getting sent into the grid while that's happening, to keep the workers safe. Next slide. In terms of installations, there are 3 types that we look at to see what works best on your rooftop. There's the ballasted array. It's low profile, which means low to the ground, and it doesn't require roof penetrations in order to keep itself anchored to the rooftop. And instead, what it uses is weighted material or some form of ballast. In this image, you can see that there are cinder blocks being used and put in place to keep the panels weight down. And because of this, it's a less technical design, it's cheaper, and it's easier to use. But it does have some drawbacks in that there's less power density in the sense that the panels aren't all as close together as the other 2 designs. And it's best for roofs that are like, have a lot of space on the rooftop and not a lot of shading or other concerns, and they can just take advantage of that simple design. When you get to more technical designs that might have more vents and more narrow and space constrained rooftops, we start to look at planar arrays. These are one of the 2 mechanically integrated arrays, the next being canopy, which I'll talk about shortly. But for planar arrays, it's mechanically integrated, which means that there will be strategic penetrations into the rooftop to keep the system anchored. And you can see in the image, those black circles around the metal posts are where the solar is integrated into the rooftop. So in this design, you can also see the panels are much closer together than in the ballasted array system. So there's greater power density. There's more ability to put panels on the rooftop, which means you'll have more solar production. So it's a great way to take advantage of space constrained and narrow rooftops that do have space for solar. But in order to get the best solar bang for your buck, so to speak, it would be better to do planar array as opposed to spread out ballasted. The third option is canopy. That's also mechanically integrated, but the benefit of this one is that it's raised 9 feet into the air, which helps out with FDNY clearance path permits. Since they're able to walk underneath them without any obstructions, you're able to put them over clear paths, which clear paths that lead to stairwell bulkhead access and things like that, which is great. in order to maximize the rooftop solar potential. Another important part of canopy arrays is that it allows tenant access and also keeps the roof space open for things like a roof deck or just having people on the rooftop in general. Since it's raised to 9 feet in the air, people can walk underneath them freely and you get to maintain that roof access. With all these benefits, there's also the point to keep in mind that it is the most expensive option, but with all the benefits that you get to maintain from a canopy array, it may be worth that extra cost. Next slide. So what goes into the cost of going solar, which is a cost that we will demonstrate on the estimate itself, the total installer, the upfront cost, which includes the site visit, which after signing a participation agreement with us, we would send the roof technician out, would look at your rooftop, and also determine where, if the rooftop is in a great condition, good condition, if there's any work needs to be done. And also he'll look into the electric room to see how the layout is and where everything is. There's also the contract creation and signing process that goes into that cost as well. There's, for the system design itself, for any kind of mechanical integrations if need be, or where the panels will be laid out and all those other structural aspects. There will also be permitting requirements that go from Department of Buildings as well as FDNY for clear paths permits and make sure that they have the space needed to get on the rooftop in case there's ever a fire emergency, as well as the actual bringing of the equipment onto the rooftop, whether they use a crane like in the bottom right screen, or if they end up using the elevator or some kind of stairwell access to bring the equipment up, as well as the most important part, which is interconnection. What that means is that at the end of the system installation, that's, you've gotten past the permits, you've gotten all the equipment on board, on top of the rooftop, and you've installed the system. Con Edison will do a final check of everything to make sure everything's hooked up properly to the grid itself. And once they give the okay, the system gets turned on and you start generating solar energy. All of that's included in the cost of solar. In terms of the RFP timeline, what happens is that once we get on a call with the building representative, we talk to them about solar and the possibilities, and it's a good fit for the building itself, and the participation agreement is signed. We get to work on getting this RFP, which is a request for proposals, made so we can send it out to installers and they get to learn about your project and seek to send bids if the project is interesting. So that timeline is about 6 weeks, and it starts with that participation agreement that I mentioned before. And as I also mentioned, we also send our roof technician out who performs that on-site assessment, electrical rooms, seeing the condition of the rooftop. And that's in week 1. And week 2 is when we start to draft the request for proposals based off of the information that we know of the building so far, and also the information that's gathered from our roof technician that gets sent out. And we develop that RFP, we send it back to you for any final points to note. And in weeks 3 to 5 is when we send out that RFP to installers to bid on the project. We typically give them 2 weeks, but if it's a larger portfolio of buildings that are being considered, there'll be a point where we might give an additional week or so, just so they get to properly assess the scope of the project. And weeks 4 and 5 is a big comparison form, which is all the bids that come in from weeks 3 to 5, we put together and consolidate and do a little compare and contrast so that the building representative can understand what the benefits of each installer's proposal is, the cost of each solar installer's proposal, and what equipment they're attempting to provide for the solar installation. And this will be a pivotal point where the building representative makes that solar decision. And week 6, the building selects the installer after looking at the form, and contract negotiations begin. If there's anything in the form that we talked about in weeks 4 to 5 that you had questions about before signing a contract with the installer, this is the pivotal moment where you address all those concerns before agreeing to a solar installation with that company. And we'll always be around beyond these 6 weeks to provide that solar support if needed. And lastly, I wanted to bring to note the different solar rebates and tax incentives that are available for depending on the building type. There is the New York Sun incentive that's always given to solar projects. If it's market rate, it's $1.60 per watt. And if it's affordable housing, it's $2 per watt. There's also the federal tax credit, which recently got bumped up to 30%. It was at 26%, scheduled to drop down to 22%. So that increase back up to 30% like it was a few years prior is great, and it's a great sign that solar is not only being supported, but it's also a great investment opportunity for buildings. There's also the state tax credit, and these two are income tax credits. So yeah, and the accelerated depreciation and property tax abatement. And you can see in this matrix, before we move on, that some incentives are more applicable to building types than others. So we always want to make sure that buildings are getting that best incentive view. And pass it off to Sam.
Thank you, Patrick. Thanks for the informative solar presentation. I think I see some questions about solar in the chat already. So my name's Sam Ting. I'm the account manager for New York City Accelerator. Next, please. And thank you, Ian, to speaking about some energy conservation measures. Here's a few others that perhaps some building stakeholders may not be fully aware that this would help to reduce energy usage as well, and also may qualify for rebates or incentives from state or utility programs. Envelope upgrades include window replacement, possibly window films, wall roof insulation, as stated, air sealing, and more. And so typically utility programs would offer incentives if they're on heating gas, but there will be cases for multifamily buildings if they're on gas, if they're on heating oil, they may still qualify for state rebates for envelope upgrades, depending on the scope of work, and we would help to guide you in the right direction, put you on the right track to figure that out as well. So please feel free to reach out to us. There's upgrading pumps and fans and motors to more efficient counterparts, help to reduce energy usage and cost and emissions. Upgrading domestic hot water systems, could be separate domestic hot water tank, possibly heat pump water heaters, and more. Upgrading heating systems, as Ian had mentioned, 1 pipe, 2 pipe, and also hydronic heating systems. Would connect you with contractors, get proposals. They would best figure out what to do. Perhaps you would like a ASHRAE level 2 energy engineering study, and that could be helpful in getting quantitative analysis. There's elevator modernization, all about any kind of scope of work that reduces energy usage as well. And of course, appliance replacement, replacing more old inefficient appliances with Energy Star counterparts. Basically, we would be able to help you, and feel free to reach out to us. I've spoken to many clients in the past where they have completed projects and didn't realize that they could have gotten money for these projects. And so we want to stress that any project you're planning to implement or do, just reach out to us and we'll help you figure out if your buildings qualify for incentive programs and whether said projects qualify for rebates, and to not leave any money on the table. Next, please. Case study. A lot of buildings in New York City are typically around 100 years old. So this 15-unit multifamily building, over 17,000 square feet, almost 120 years old. It's affordable housing, so they would potentially qualify for enhanced incentives through Con Edison. This is building envelope pipe insulation, where envelope work they both help to reduce the amount of heat loss. Envelope would reduce the infiltration stack effect and loss of conditioned air, cooling, and heating. And basically, there is incentive will cover about $11,000. Total project cost $16,000, so it'll be around a $5,000 net cost to you. This is an example, and then energy savings, cost savings will be $1,700. So basically, it's about 3-year payback, which is amazing. So this is something to consider. Next, please. Case study number 2, a 10-unit multifamily building, and it's over 20,000 square feet, built in 1920s, about 100 years old. Here, this is interesting because common area lighting project where the incentives cover 89% of the cost of the project. This could be possibly affordable housing, or possibly they could be located in Brooklyn, Queens area. And if that's the case, there's a program that offers enhanced or possibly free upgrades to common area lighting. So if it covers 89%, and that means the annual savings is $4,300 plus, that means they would basically recoup the money in like less than 2 months. And also, it's possible the lighting you have on existing lighting could have been incandescent, so it's a higher energy savings that could cause also the payback period to decrease as well. There's the EC motor and speed reduction, where it's basically be having a more efficient motor with possibly VFDs would help to reduce the motor speed and reduce the amount of energy used. And here's the savings as well, really good, and it's about 4-year payback. Energy management system, typically for heating systems like, with boilers, hydronic 1 and 2 pipe steam. A lot of the older buildings would typically still have the outdoor temperature sensors, which doesn't accurately gauge the comfort indoors. So if you're on heating gas, nat grid or Con Edison, and you have only outdoor, perhaps we can reach out to us. We can help you verify if your buildings qualify for advanced boiler controls or indoor temperature sensors, which will gauge the average indoor temperature sensor of the tenants instead of the outdoor, which would not properly provide tenant comfort. And this will also reduce energy usage, and the payback is quite good as well. Total incentive is that $500, so it's less than a year. So it's pretty amazing as well. We can help verify all this for you. Next, please. Here is local law compliance. Benchmarking, okay, it's basically any buildings that are over 25,000 square feet, we need to benchmark by May 1st of each year. And there's some missing on the bottom, which is fine. I think I kind of remember them, so no worries. Energy audits, local 87 for buildings over 50,000 square feet. They're required to comply by hiring design professional to do an energy audit, last year level 2, and also retro commissioning, which are mandated. Energy audits, mind you, are recommended energy conservation measures, which you can do if you want to, voluntary. Retro commissioning report will list mandated measures that you must implement. Okay, so this must be done by compliance deadline year that we can help to verify on your behalf and help you to get these things done as well. So reach out to us if you have any buildings in portfolio that are over 25,000 square feet or 50,000 square feet. Reach out to us and we can help you verify this information. There's also Local 92, 94, which are the green roofs, and that would be for a building over 25,000 square feet that must comply with Local 92, 94, and we can actually help you to help you figure out whether or not it would trigger. There's a grades, energy efficiency grades, as you've been seeing, like restaurants on buildings. There's for buildings over 25,000 square feet, and these grades, I believe there's a question about that. These grades are based on the gross floor area of the building, and as well as energy usages for common and residential in-unit energy usages. And there's carbon emissions intensity limits will be Local 97 over 25,000 square foot, and we would help you figure out if there's any estimated fines and so forth as well. There's also PACE, Local 96, which and also other financing tools, which Andrew Chins, who's speaking next, would be able to help you to explore and find the most suitable financing option for you as well. Next, please. And actually, Andrew Chins is next.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Andrew Chins. I'm the financing specialist with the Accelerator. So I get brought in with your conversations with your account manager to help you identify the financing options that are available and help you kind of navigate through that process. I'm just going to give you a quick overview. I'll try to be very brief because I want to make sure we have enough time for questions. Just give you a quick overview of some of the financing options. You can go to the next slide. So first off, why would we want to do finance energy efficiency upgrades? A lot of building owners might shy away from debt because it's just an aversion to taking on debt, but it really can be a great tool to help make these improvements more affordable. It obviously eliminates or minimizes the need for coming up with the money up front. It can help move projects along that aren't getting done, particularly larger projects. You can do deeper retrofits with financing and get the kind of amplify the payback periods by using the financing. It also, by using the financing, it will help reduce the need to draw on your reserves so they can be used for other capital needs. And if you can combine other measures, other capital needs with your financing in addition to the energy efficiency, that'll also make the financing more cost effective and efficient. But the big issue or the biggest takeaway, I guess, is for financing energy efficiency is that it's unique in that when you spend money and invest in the building and you actually can create savings in energy and maintenance and create positive cash flow, maybe enough to even offset the payment to pay back the financing each year and maybe even beyond that. So that's a unique characteristic of financing energy efficiency. You can go to the next slide. So as Sam had mentioned, one of the local laws, 96, authorizes PACE financing. PACE is property assessed clean energy. It started in California about 15 years ago, and it's been authorized in about 36 states. New York City adopted it so that building owners, in trying to meet the requirements of the local laws, will now have a financing mechanism. It provides 100% financing, so nothing out of pocket with the owner. It's paid back on the tax bill, just as you might pay other line items on your tax bill for public improvements. This is also a public improvement because it's reducing greenhouse gases for the whole community, yet it's improvements to your private building. And so as a tax, it just transfers to the next owner if you decide to sell the building. So the key also with the 100% financing is that it's long-term. It's based on the life of the improvements, and many of the improvements we've been talking about are long-term. So this can go 20 or even up to 30-year financing, and that's really important because it's self-amortizing, it makes the payments smaller and allows for it to be more affordable. And again, the savings could more possibly offset that financing payment. Please, we'd love to talk to you about PACE. We're here to help you see if it fits your building and navigate the process. It's a New York City administered program, but the lenders are private lenders. And I will mention that PACE is a great tool, but it's not available for every building. It's commercial PACE for commercial buildings. We don't have residential PACE, which eliminates condominiums from using PACE in New York City because those are individual units. The PACE lenders have minimum sizes. So when we're talking about small buildings or smaller projects, the PACE lenders will normally not do loans below $500,000, although I know there's a bank that's going to be getting approved that will do $250,000 loans. So we hope that there will be that, but it is tough for smaller loans at this point. And then, as a tax-driven, as a tax-secured financing, your mortgage lender has to give consent, and sometimes those lenders will not give consent, and that proves to be a challenge and sometimes makes PACE not available. So we can help you with finding other options if PACE doesn't work. You can go to the next slide. This is just a quick kind of simple case study for how PACE is used. We have not done a small building PACE project yet in New York City, so I borrowed this from another PACE program in New York State. This is a very small 17,000 or 18,000 square foot building. It's multifamily. On the left, you see all the measures, a lot of the things we've been talking about that were financed by PACE. And on the right, you can see the whole cost of these measures is $313,000. There are $20,000 in incentives. So the loan net of the incentives comes down to $293,000. And so it's a 20-year loan based on the average life of those improvements. And the payment is $30,000 annually. And since the savings are projected at $34,000, there's actually a $4,000, excess cash flow that the building gets. So again, 100% financing. The building owner didn't come out of pocket at all, and they're going to be able to pay for this every year for 20 years, and then in additionally have the $4,000 extra each year. You can go to the next slide. So as I mentioned, PACE doesn't work for every building. We have another product that we are bringing to New York City called Catalyst, and it was designed really for those issues with PACE for buildings that can't access PACE. This was actually designed in Connecticut in their PACE program and the Connecticut Green Bank because they came across the same issues with buildings, like small projects, condominiums, affordable housing, because those lenders sometimes will not accept a PACE loan. These are all the types of buildings that the Catalyst loan can use, and it is provided by a nonprofit lender called Inclusive Prosperity Capital. Again, it's an offshoot of the Connecticut Green Bank. So this has a lot of the same characteristics of PACE, except that it's not paid back on the tax, so you avoid that challenge with the consent. But you can do loans as small as $50,000. It also will do health and safety improvements, so you could include some local law 11 improvements. And it serves all of these multifamily projects, as I mentioned, condominiums, co-ops, affordable housing that PACE can't sometimes access. You can go to the next slide. So in addition, we do have other options, and just very high level. Again, you should please reach out to us. We can talk to you about the plans, your plan scope and what kind of energy efficiency or renewable energy financing options there are. We have, I think the first city, New York is the first city to have a local green bank called the New York City Energy Efficiency Corporation, and they will do loans for this type of work. The loans I've been talking about, PACE and Catalyst and Energy Efficiency Corporation loans, they're all what we call mid-cycle. So you might have an existing mortgage, and you can use these loans on top of that. But if you are at the end of your kind of capital cycle and you're ready to refinance your mortgage, by all means, putting this scope of work for energy efficiency within the mortgage is a good option, and some of the lenders even have green mortgages, which allow you to borrow a little bit more because of the savings that they will create. We also have equipment loans and leases for those specific purposes, less of a whole building approach. And then there's the non-debt financing solutions. These are really more for larger buildings, and they're more of a service agreement, which comes with financing. But less of an option for smaller buildings. So I will stop there. I know we have limited time, and I want to get to the questions. Thank you.
Hey everyone, and just to jump in here, so we are running pretty close. We will probably only have a chance to do 1 or 2 questions, but if you have a question and we're not able to get to it today, feel free just to reach out to us at info@accelerator.nyc. That's the email on the screen here. We'd be happy to answer your question. We'd be happy to work with you on an ongoing basis. Some of you might have my email address. If you got an invite from me, feel free to respond to that directly. And the other thing that I wanted to mention is that we did have a slight technical difficulty with one of Sam's slides, for whatever reason, some information about local laws was not showing up, but that's something we do as well. So if you have questions about 97 or any other local laws, that's also something that we do, as Sam mentioned. But I'm just going to kind of, choose maybe 1 to 2 questions at random. We got some really good questions in the chat. And if we weren't able to get to your question today, just feel free to reach out to us at any time. We'd be happy to help you. So why don't we go with Anna's question? How do solar panels affect, if at all, heat retention? Can white roofs be used along with the solar panels? Patrick, do you want to take that question?
Yeah, and it's a great question. So put it simply, solar panels, when they're on the rooftop, they're preventing sunlight to have direct contact on your rooftop. So the areas where solar is located, it's actually really good for your rooftop, since it's blocking that direct solar rays affecting your rooftop. And that's like majority of what ages a roof, the solar itself. I mean, the sun's solar rays itself. So solar panels are great for that. And white roofs can be used along with solar, and that can be part of like the preparation for a rooftop to be solar ready. And that's something that could potentially be included within the solar basis itself, like white coating and white reflective coating, in order to prepare for having the solar installed. Solar panels do work best when it's cooler. So having that cool roof would help to optimize.
Thanks, Patrick. And why don't we just take one more? Let's go with OC's question. Can co-ops use PACE? Andrew, will you mind taking that?
Sure, absolutely. Co-ops can use PACE, different from condominiums. Co-ops are considered more in this commercial PACE arena because the loan is made to the cooperative corporation as opposed to the single owner, individual owners of a condominium. The only thing that's an issue with condos is, with co-ops, is whether if there is a loan to the co-op, a mortgage loan, those lenders will sometimes not approve PACE. And we've seen this with the National Cooperative Bank, who will not accept a PACE lien based on the kind of the securitization rules and documents that they have when they sell their loans off. They can't accept the PACE loan, but they do have a supplemental mortgage product that they would offer in, kind of response to that. But generally, yes, co-ops can use PACE loans.
Okay, everyone. Well, we're at 11, so I think we'll have to leave it off there. But I just want to thank everyone for attending our webinar today, and we'd be happy to help you. So please reach out to us with any questions, or if you'd like to be paired with an account manager. But thanks everyone for their time, and I hope you have a great rest of the week.